Welcome everybody to our Solar Contractor Technical Training in 2020. I am Joe Lopez and I'm part of the solar team at Austin Energy's Customer Renewable Energy Solutions department. We provide this training to provide technical training to new contractors within our program, people that are trying to get on our list, as well as people who just want to learn more about any updates that are going on within our program and want to refresh their knowledge or have new employees in their company that they feel could learn from what our technical requirements are. So, starting with that, I'm going to go into what our references are. So, a few things that you guys need to be familiar with before we get going is the National Electric Code. So the NEC, or the National Electric Code, sets the National Foundation for Electrical Safety. Article 690 specifically applies to solar PV electrical energy systems. So that includes array circuits, inverters, controllers, and Article 705 is more broadly about distributed generation interconnections. And this is something that you should refer to your master electrician for. They should have a broad depth of knowledge about this. So please refer to them if you have any questions as well. The Austin Energy Design Criteria provides basically all of the criteria, guidelines, definitions, and descriptions approved by the City of Austin City Council for the design and the installation of the customer's electric facilities that will be served by Austin Energy. They can be used for the design and installation of all electrical services that are within the Austin Energy service area. I provided this hyperlink here for you guys in case you have want a quick access to that there. We have the Austin Energy Distribution Interconnection Guide, which outlines the process for connecting a distributed generation or distributed energy resources facility and defines the minimum technical and financial requirements for safe integration of customer-owned power production facilities with the Austin Energy distribution system. This is also hyperlinked there. The inspection checklist. This is something that I really recommend that you print out and just have handy on you, especially when you guys are in the installation process, getting ready for that first inspection. The purpose of the inspection checklist is for the QA, QC of your projects prior to inspection and to ensure that there's consistent inspection practices. Specifically, you want to look at page 63 to 64 of the Distribution Interconnection Guide. That's where you can find that checklist. That's something that I really recommend that you guys kind of go one by one on each point to just check that you have everything going there. We have the electrical city ordinances, so color codes, license requirements, local code requirements, as hyperlinked here. And then finally, we have our program guidelines, which are specific to all of our different rebate and incentive programs. So our residential rebate programs, our commercial rebate, multifamily, you can find all of that on our website. And they each have pages related to each of those programs. I have this title here for the reference locations. This is hyperlinked, so you guys can find that page immediately just by pressing that. But if you're on the Austin Energy site, you just need to press Contractors, Electric Service Design and Planning, and you will find a lot of these basically documents that I just listed here below for you to download, review, and look at your own leisure. So the Distribution Connection Guide, Design Criteria Manual, all of that's available there. As well if you want to look at any kind of standards or a City of Austin code. So what's different about Austin? I've had some things hyperlinked here for you all as well, but key differences that we have from the NEC are color codes. So it's red, black, blue versus black, red, and blue here. Wire sizes, the neutral must be the same capacity as the max, so not 70% as it's listed in the NEC. And in Austin, solar is a service, and it's considered a service, and so it's not a branch circuit or a feeder. And we use only copper number 6 for ground. Specific Austin requirements that are specific just to us. Line side taps, so they must have a main breaker in the panel, and the line side tap should hit the meter first, not the disconnect. It must be an Austin Energy meter can, and it must be a minimum 200 amp bypass. There should always be a 2-inch clearance around the meter can. And there should always be address numbers listed. So 2 inches high, black on white, so that's as clear as possible. You want to make that as visible as anybody can see. And that can be on any of either the meter can, the main panel, or the Austin Energy meter. We have a photo and a diagram later in this presentation, which will show you exactly where you can put all this information to. Finally, a few things that are specific to our rebate program requirements is our shade requirements. We'll go into that. We go into that a lot in our administrative training too. But we require that you should have a total overall TSRF, or total solar resource fraction score, of above 75% overall for the year. So you need to have and make sure that you do, if you're unsure about the shade situation, do a shade analysis. If our inspectors think that it might be shaded, they'll request a shade analysis from you, and you guys will send that to me, and which is something that I will review. And then also that a lightning arrestor must be installed. Does anybody have any questions up till now? Okay, I'll move forward. So day in the life of a solar project, we just want to kind of organize this in a way so that you guys can see what to expect in each process, in the design part, the metering part, the permitting part, installation, so forth. What I will say here is what I want you guys to have as references or key contacts or timelines for basically throughout this entire process. So for the design, basically everything that I had listed to you prior. Key contacts for that would be pre-construction. So that would be the solar inspections at austinenergy.com. So that is, in case you have any questions that you would like to ask our inspectors about something that you are designing, something that you're getting set up, and that is something that you can use just to make sure that you're getting another opinion. And that is a timeline of about a week. And you should have a line diagram the notes is that the line diagram should be about the same every time. For the meter shop, that is who you refer to when it comes to metering. Key contacts are Abdur and Ryan. I'll be sure to have that all listed. Just so you guys know, we'll have a large contact sheet at the end of this presentation so you guys know who to contact for basically any of your needs. Keep in mind the timeline for metering is about 6 weeks for meter variant, so please plan ahead. Make sure that you are putting that in ahead of time, just so that you can plan accordingly and so that you can set expectations with your customer. So yeah, apply as early as possible if you need one. You do not need to build until you cannot build until it's approved. Permitting, refer to the permitting office. There's the One Texas Center, timeline of 3 to 5 days. You must have your permit balance paid off in order for your permit to be valid. Installation, please refer to the guidelines and the checklist, like I said before. Please print those out, have those handy and ready for you. Please refer to your master electrician, who should have a lot of this information just handy and just has experience with all of this. Timeline is basically up to you and your team, and whatever you've agreed to with your customer, make sure that you're just following up with those expectations with your customer, and that they're happy with what it is and that you're just being completely transparent with them. If your name is on the permit, the work belongs to you, so just choose a team that represents you well there. Finally, for the last step, make sure that you're referring to the checklist. Mike Van Sant is our inspection coordinator. You can refer to solar inspections at austinenergy.com, and that will help address all of your solar inspection questions, coordination, all of that. You should have a residential journeyman or a master electrician present at inspection. Keep in mind that this is pre-corona. At current time during this coronavirus pandemic, we are only requiring that the master electrician or that somebody from your company be present at inspection if Austin Energy asks and requires them to be there. So that's the case there. And the timeline is typically 5 to 7 days for inspection, up to 10 business days after inspection for the meter install. Right. Keep in mind what Sarah and Norris just mentioned in the comments. So the good design is the result of collaboration between sales and design. So site familiarity is critical. So if you have any specific concerns, like I said before, schedule a pre-construction consultation with one of our inspectors at solarinspections@austinenergy.com. Reach out to them, get a second opinion, ask questions, see what works and what doesn't. Just make sure to look at the equipment wall during the design process. Make sure that the meter placement and the grouping are where they're supposed to be, because those are the top errors that we see. Those are some things that our inspectors, that Rory consistently finds that need to be corrected. Common errors here: service upgrade requirements are not met. Sometimes there's too much shading, like I mentioned before. The roof needs to have more than 10 years of life remaining on it. That's very important. So it cannot be an old roof. There needs to be meter access and spacing. I'll have a photo for you guys later on that. And you need to be sure that you're complying with our local codes and ordinances. So please, please, please look at all the documents that we have listed here. Look at the checklist and just go all of that. We really want to be sure that our inspectors can just come to the inspection, find that everything's there and all right, and then it won't be kind of a back and forth, because I know it's frustrating if you have to kind of go through the process all over again, wait a few more weeks for the next inspection, get it corrected. Certainly saves you time, serves our inspectors time. It saves other contractors time as well, so they have more time to have us come to them. So please have a look at all those documents. So with a line side tap, basically, why do a line side tap? There's no breaker space for a backfeed breaker. They're more common on older panels. Again, an AE in Austin Energy, solar as a service. It's not a branch circuit or a feeder. Common errors are that solar disconnects cannot be more than 10 feet from the line side tap. It can't be installed in a crowded breaker box, and there's a minimum 60 amps disconnect. I think Rory Voigt might be here on the line. Rory, if you have any comments, feel free to and add what you can.
Yeah. Me and Alan, can y'all hear me?
Hi, there you are. Yes. Thanks
Okay, listen, me and Alan Johnson, we're here listening to every word you're saying. Yeah. So far, so good. You're doing a great job, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So moving on. This is what a good line diagram looks like. Alan, Rory, if you guys have any comments here, but basically just be sure that you are doing everything and providing all the solar array details that's listed, that you're providing the amounts of modules that are listed, that you have the breaker locations and sizes listed, that you have wire sizes listed, that in every single way possible, the line diagram matches what your installation is. That just makes Rory's life easier, makes Alan's life easier. Make sure that you have all of that available. Make sure it's NAPSAP certified. All of that. Rory, do you have any more comments on this, or?
I'm fine. So far, so good.
Okay, that's good. Please refer to this, everybody, about how a good line diagram should look like. It should be clear. It should not be fuzzy. It should be spaced out so that we aren't trying to figure out where all the information is connected to. Just make sure that it's clear, it's concise, and not too hard to read. All right, so before I pass off the rest of the presentation to our Sarah Norris, do I have any questions from the group? All right. Sarah, it's all yours.
Y'all are awfully quiet this morning. All right, do you want to advance to the next slide? And will you mute, Joe?
Yes, I will go on mute right now.
Okay, excellent. All right, metering. Why are we even talking about metering? Basically, meter placement is probably the most common issue at inspection. As Joe noted earlier, a couple of these pieces, but meters must be accessible 24 hours a day, meaning they cannot be behind a locked gate or with a very vicious guard dog. They must be grouped. There must be 3 feet of clearance in front of the meter, and there must be 2 inches of clearance around the AE meter cans. If you are unable to meet these requirements, you must request a meter variance. And a meter variance may take up to 6 weeks, and they're not always granted. So if this is part of why, kind of circling back to what Joe said earlier, good design requires both sales and your designer on site, and and your electrician on site, because your electrician, especially if they're familiar with Austin Energy, is going to be able to look at the equipment wall and know whether or not it's going to require a meter variance. Per Austin Energy guidelines, you must request the variance prior to placing the meter in an alternate location. The application requires a 1-line drawing showing all existing and new proposed meters, proposed placard language describing the alternative location, and any supporting documents that help explain why the alternative location is needed. And all of that needs to be submitted to Obdor. That contact is in the contact list in the back of this, at the end of this presentation. Some common errors that we see out in the field is that the meter is upside down, that it's too high or out of reach. Rory's tall, but he's not 7 feet tall, so don't put it to where he can't see it or reach it. Sometimes we've seen the improper meter cans from CPS or different utilities installed. A lot of times, people don't think about it, but the meter will end up behind a locked gate. There are also rules about it not being located on a back porch with an overhang of more than 72 inches. That has to do with that space being considered inside the house. It needs to be more than, so I'm realizing that a lot of my my little carrots, my greater than or less than carrots, are incorrect in this presentation. But anyway, it needs to be more than 4-foot radius from the gas meter, not less than. A temporary meter left instead. Sometimes people leave a temporary meter left instead of a permanent meter. And you are not permitted to knock out your own holes in the meter can. You must use the factory knockouts. And all of this information can be found both in the AE design criteria sections listed below, as well as in the appendix of this presentation. I've tried to pull out every single reference to meter requirements from the design criteria. So hopefully that will help. Next. And in addition to that, I made this really sweet diagram for you guys. As you can tell, we have Rory here. You can tell by his hat. And this is basically just meant to be a visual cue to help you think about, the space in, where it needs to be in reference to everything around it. So, another note on this diagram is that the radius around, I think it's evident, but the radius around the gas meter, it includes in the 3rd dimension as well. So of course I couldn't display a full bubble, but if you are placing your meter on an opposite wall from the gas meter, you also need to be 4 feet away. Again, that's because of fire hazards, I assume. All right, next. All right. CT meters, this is something that generally you only use for commercial or occasionally multifamily. The inspection request process is different for CT meters. This is why we're kind of noting it in this training. If a CT meter is going to be used for the installation, you need to contact the meter dispatch group. You can see the complex metering dispatch contact information here at the bottom of the slide to schedule an installation and inspection after the PV system is installed, but prior to requesting the final electrical inspection from the solar team. Generally, you see the CT meters installed for installations over 225 amps. But if you have a question about whether or not your installation will require a CT meter, please get in touch with the complex metering dispatch group. They can help you out, but the CT meter must be placed prior to requesting final inspection from the solar group. This is not the case for regular meters. It is an exception specifically for CT meters. Next. Are there any questions about meters? All right. Okay, permitting. You know, I know that there have been a lot of challenges around permitting lately. I do think that we are finally getting to a place, both with permitting and with our relationship with permitting, where those have improved. I will note that for rebated projects, the system must be both contracted and permitted by the same participating contractor. Subcontractors may not pull the permit on your behalf. That is a very important note. The type of permit that you'll be pulling is an electrical permit with the work type of auxiliary power for pretty much all solar jobs. And all of that can be completed online via the Austin Build and Connect website, or you can call the service center at the number listed below and contact them through that email. If you are doing a new construction and or ground mount, you will need to also pull a building permit. Again, you'll just get in touch with the permit center at Austin Build and Connect. And if you are installing an EV charging station, that is an electrical permit, but is a repair work type. And again, that will also be conducted through the permit office. Please note that our team actually does not issue or manage permits. We have no relationship really, you know, to the way the permits get processed. So, you know, as much as we want to help move the process along, we are very limited in our capabilities, and we do recommend that you get in touch with the permit office early if you have any questions or issues with your permit. Of course, here it says go to One Texas Center, and that is no longer the case. But again, just reach out to the number and emails listed above. You can also get in touch with them through 311. Some common errors that we see are that a permit was not pulled before commencing electrical work. That is actually not legal in the city of Austin and in the Austin Energy Territory. You must have a permit before you open the panel. Another issue that we see is somebody calls for inspection, but there's a balance on their permits, their permits aren't clean, and we can't pass your permit if you don't have a clean permit. So please just, you know, when you call for inspection, do your due diligence and make sure that your permits are clean. And finally, as noted before, the permit is pulled by a subcontractor. Again, that is not acceptable within our rebated program. Okay, next. Alrighty, the Digba. This is part of your permit application. If you are less than 50 kilowatts, you will get automatic approval, and you need only submit your Digba, your distributed generation planning application, with your permit application. This is our way internally of keeping track of the system sizes and making sure that we have all of that information, you know, for long-term planning in the city. Between 50 kilowatts and 500 kilowatts, you will submit it to Digba review at Austin Energy, and we will need to approve it prior to you applying for the permit. You will need an approved Digba to submit with your permit application for system sizes in that range. And then for over 500 kilowatts and new construction, you are required to submit your Digba to Austin Energy's electric service and design team. And they have a very nicely streamlined intake form. Sometimes I wish the rest of the utility could get a handle on that strategy. But anyway, we've hyperlinked to it here. And last but not least, if you are installing on the downtown network, it is, regardless of the size of your install, it requires review by the ESD team. And you can go through the same process as those larger projects. There is a much more detailed process guideline on page 24 of the distribution interconnection guidelines. And I do have it in the reference section of this presentation as well. So, next. Are there any questions about permits? Man, I'm starting to wonder if there are any contractors on here at all. Haven't heard from any of you guys. All right. All right, installation. Oh, do I hear somebody trying to chime in? Okay. All right. So we have what I hope is the latest and greatest photo of an equipment wall of an installation. This is basically an illustration of an ideal installation. You can see there's 2 inches or more around the meter cans. You have the warning labels on all of the, on the meters and the panels and the disconnects. You can see that there's that address label, as noted before, 2-inch black on white label stickers. And again, just for reference, like that is so that if there is a fire or an emergency and somebody needs to come in and shut it down, they're certain to be able to shut down the right one for the correct address. You can see the disconnect is between the PV meter and the inverter here. And you have your panel, your utility meter, PV meter, your disconnect, and then your inverters. Do you have any comments on this, Rory?
No, ma'am. That's a nice looking picture, I think, but everything looks good to me.
Great. All right. Thank you, Rory, for securing us this picture.
Oh, you're welcome.
All righty. Next, Joe. Okay. A few more notes about installation. If your conductors will not be accessible at the time of final electrical inspection, or if the wiring is buried or within a wall, you will need to request a rough inspection. We do prioritize scheduling those, so we'll try to get those out the door as quickly as possible. So you'll need to schedule a rough inspection by emailing solarinspections@austinenergy.com. Please put rough inspection in the subject line along with the address. That will just make sure that it doesn't get lost in the fray. But you must request this prior to covering those conductors up. Otherwise, we don't want to make you have to cut a hole in your drywall or dig a new ditch, so that we can ensure that the conductors are properly run. Another note is, a key to success here is good housekeeping, good cable management, good labeling, and sturdy connections. Those are really 3 things that should be pretty easy to do if you're just really mindful during your installation process. And they're habits that once you instill, they're useful across every utility. It will keep your customers happy, and they will keep the inspectors happy. As always, shedding of water This is super important. I like to tell the story that I guess now is about a year ago, but we got a new roof on our house and it was all great until the next rainstorm. And then suddenly there was a waterfall coming out of my attic. They had not used the correct flashing on the roof vents, and it caused a pretty catastrophic leak. And boy, was that roofing company in deep for resolving that. So, you know, look out for your customers, look out for, you know, yourself, and make sure to be really aware of where those roof penetrations are happening, and use the approved flashing. You know, I've been fighting a never-ending battle against the squirrels with my tomato garden this year. But you know, when they don't have tasty tomatoes to eat, they really, really like wires. So be careful to not get food on the equipment. Wear gloves and wash your hands. And where possible, I know that there are some types of wires that are rated against critters. So finally, and we've discussed this before, but it's so important that we must reiterate it. You may use a subcontractor to do your installation work. However, as the primary contractor, you are responsible for the work done. You must choose people that you trust. And the kind of underline here is, if something goes wrong with an installation and your customer complains to us, you are the one that we are going to hold responsible. We do not have the same, like, your access to the rebate program is a privilege. And that is the only sort of carrot/stick that we have. So please choose your subcontractors wisely. If something goes wrong with work that they have done, it is your responsibility for that. When you do use a subcontractor, you must list them on the customer agreement form. Again, this is a means of communicating with the customer. It is a tool to help you and to help us and to help the customer understand everything that's going on. You know, I just like to remind people that this is Texas. And if I don't know there's supposed to be a subcontractor, some other guy is rooting around on my roof, you know, I might just pull my gun out or call the cops. So make sure that your customers know who is going to be working on their house. It's really a courtesy that we would all want for ourselves. So, and again, your subcontractor cannot pull the permit for your job. Finally, the last two notes are QC the system and then QC it again. We know that you guys don't want to have to go out to the customer's house a million times. You don't want all the delays that happen when you have to get re-inspected. The best prevention against that is to QC your system and QC it again and use the inspection checklist. Finally, some common errors are, you know, that people don't install or that people install before they have their permit. Poor cable management, loose wire connections, the system isn't QC'd, meaning the panels aren't producing. The meter guidelines are not met, and the variants or variances have not been requested, and the installed system does not match the design or drawing. So those are some notes there. Next. How do we prepare for an inspection? We are keeping this slide the same in anticipation that someday the pandemic will end. So these are instructions for pre-corona. I will, at the end of going through the slide, note the major changes again. So who should come to your inspection? Somebody who is technically allowed to work on the panel. So that can be a master electrician, a residential journeyman, or a JIW. Please make sure that your vehicle has your TECL number and your company name on it. That is not our rule. That is a TDLR rule. And when you come to the inspection, please bring your wiring diagram, your layout, your TDLR documentation, your licenses, and the appropriate tools to make corrections. part of what makes it so difficult in this era of Corona is that if there were small things before Corona that could be fixed on site, Rory especially was real good about, letting you go ahead and do it and tighten up this wire and fix up this thing that's problematic. Obviously now things have changed, and we'll talk about that in a sec. Well, I'll actually go into that now. In the era of Corona, again, as noted previously, do not send somebody to the inspection unless requested by Austin Energy. The 3 scenarios in which we are often requiring people to come to the inspection are if you are using SolarEdge inverters, if you are using in-phase inverters, or if you have a battery installation. Those are the 3 scenarios in which your technician must be present. We are working to resolve the SolarEdge and inverter issue, or sorry, SolarEdge and in-phase issue. But for now, that is how we are operating. How do you request an inspection? For a rebated inspection, you will process the installation step in EECP. Please do not do this until you have completed your QA/QC on the installation. If we go to schedule the inspection, even if it has been like a 2 or 3 week lead time, and then you call me and you tell me, hey, I'm not ready for the inspection, you're going to the back of the line. We have to be fair to the people who go ahead and have their systems ready when they submit for inspection. And then, of course, you need to make sure that all of the documents are submitted in EECP. And finally, for non-rebated inspections, send an email to solarinspections@austinenergy.com. And ideally, and I'll add this to the slide, with the address in the subject line and the permit number in the body. That will help us to keep those organized. And of course, use that checklist before requesting inspection. Next. Speaking of the checklist, here it is. As noted previously, it is pages 63 and 64 of the Austin Energy Interconnection Guide. Learn it, love it, hand it out to everybody on your team. Everybody should be aware of it. Next. Just some highlights from it. Again, a lot of things that we've noted previously. That you need to have your design drawings present, that the installation should be consistent with the drawings. Some notes about line side taps here and the references. Please make sure all components are mounted securely. And then, of course, I think this was an error in the original one, but a number 6 wire gauge is permitted up to the AC disconnect, and then after that, it needs to be number 8. And then there's just a note that neutral requirements are different for Austin Energy than for NEC. They are full size per the Austin Energy Design Criteria Manual. Next. Few other notes. You should have a lightning arrestor installed. Your DG meter must have a 200 amp bypass handle minimum. Ungrouped meters do require a meter variance. Specific to Austin Energy, the handle rating of a disconnect on a line side tap must be, a fusible disconnect, and must be 60 amps. This is because we treat solar as a service, not as a branch circuit or feeder. Cable management is important for both project safety and future maintenance. And again, this checklist does need to be updated. And as soon as we get fully staffed, we will be sure to do that. But the revised clearance from the gas meters needs to be 4 feet, not 3 feet, as previously stated. Next. And I'm not going to go into any particular details on the specifics about the array because I know that you guys are all intimately familiar with this checklist already, but it is here for your reference. Next. Are there any other questions? Oh,
So Sean says, can you go into more detail why we need to be on site for the inspection for an in-phase setup?
Rory, I pass that one to you.
Okay, that's a good question. Sarah, that was one thing that we need to take off the list there. I'm sorry I didn't let you know about that earlier. In-phase is microinverters, and they don't need to be present for there unless something's really wrong. But generally speaking, they don't need to be there for microinverters, only for single inverter systems, because I don't know how to operate half of those things that are out there. So to answer your question, no, you don't have to be out there for microinverters, which in phases, that's what those are, correct? Whoever asked that question, is that correct? In phases is microinverters.
They said yes.
Okay. Thank you for the question.
I have a question. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, for the 4-foot measuring from the for the gas meter, are we measuring from the center, from that regulator, that circular regulator, or from the actual center of the meter or the gas meter?
You're measuring from the center of the regulator.
The center of the regulator. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Actually, Joe, will you go back to the slide with the cartoon of the meter distances? I just want to make sure that it's correct. Okay, so it's from the regulator, not from the meter, Rory, because I think in a previous meeting, someone had noted, I believe it was Farwell, that it was measured from the center of the meter, but it's from the center of the regulator.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, I will update the slide accordingly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tarek. Okay, next slide. All right, we're actually almost done. Who to contact? There's just some handy contact sheets here at the back. I'm not going to go through them. You can click through them real quick, Joe, if you want. But this has useful information like who to call to report a cut, broken, or missing meter seal, or who to call for temporary disconnects, questions about permits, how to reset a password, etc. So, what we have in our house, in our office, when we used to have an office, was we would just print these contact sheets out and we all had them on the walls of our cubicles so that, when anybody had a question, we could quickly send them to the correct contact information. I highly recommend that you do that in your office or home, as it were. And we probably will need to update these to take Mike Van Zant's name off of him. We miss him so much that we can't imagine what life is like without him. So anyway, but we will update those, but those emails are still valid. Okay. And I think that closes it out. If there are any other questions, the Austin Energy Group will stick around. But if not, please go ahead and sign your name and your company name, who you represent, in the chat box. And we'll just hang out for a little bit longer to field any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.